As the state's leading property and casualty insurance trade association, the Wisconsin Insurance Alliance plays a crucial role in safeguarding Wisconsinites. Alliance members provide vital insurance coverage, ensuring financial protection for individuals, businesses, and communities across the state. In times of need, they act as a reliable resource, helping residents recover from unforeseen events. Ultimately, the Wisconsin Insurance Alliance and its members contribute to the resilience and well-being of Wisconsin families and businesses by offering essential protection and support. WisI video of the WisPolitics Madison Luncheon series at the Madison Club is made possible with sponsorship support from the Wisconsin Insurance Alliance.
Hey, hi everybody. Welcome to the October 3rd edition of the WisPolitics Luncheon at the Madison Club. I'm Jeff Mayers from WisPolitics.com. A couple of announcements before we get going. So, we're a digital publication, WisPolitics.com, but we do a printed election guide every 2 years, as well as an annual printed directory. So there's some available at the registration desk, but if you need more, you can see Colin Schmees. Colin, where are you? There he is. All right, let's hear it for Colin. All right, yeah. All right, upcoming events, October 15th, right here, we have the annual WisPolitics Polling Summit, and that's where we talk about the horse race and what's going to happen or what might happen in November. We have some top pollsters and analysts. You can find the information at WisPolitics.com at the website and register there. And Charles Franklin, the Marquette University Law School pollster, is among the panelists. October 29th, here as part of our regular series, we're going to have the Madison Mayor, Satya Rhodes Conway, to talk about the referendum that's going to be on the November 5th ballot, the city's relationship with the state, and I'm sure bus rapid transit will be on people's minds too. So everybody should take a ride on the bus rapid transit so you have a good question for the mayor. Okay, I want to thank the sponsors for our event series. We truly could not do it without you. Hush Blackwell Strategies, who have been with us from the beginning under some various names, but Mike Rogowski has always been there, so thank you, Mike. AARP Wisconsin, thanks very much for helping with this event. And American Family Insurance, XL Energy, Walmart, Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield, and Wisconsin Eye, and the sponsors of the Wisconsin Eye video of the Madison Club event series, the Wisconsin Insurance Alliance. So let's hear it. Wild applause for the sponsors. Okay, at WisPolitics.com, we plead guilty. We focus on the horse race. Who's going to win? Who's gaining? Who's losing? But I think we don't often talk about the issues per se, enough about the issues. So I think this panel, again, I want to thank AARP Wisconsin for suggesting it. We did something like this a couple years ago too. It was really insightful, and so we want to focus on the issues that are most important to female voters. And so we have a great all-star panel here. So we can just go down the line here. Lieutenant Governor Sara Rodriguez. Mia Moore, who is a UW-Milwaukee freshman. Megan Novak, the AFP Director for Wisconsin. Thank you, Megan. Leslie Spencer-Herrera, who is the President of AARP Wisconsin. And former State Rep Amy Loudenbeck. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's just go down let's just personalize a little bit. What do you and your family and friends, what are the issues you think are most going to affect you and people like you in this upcoming election? Go ahead.
So first of all, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this. I live in Waukesha County, which is suburban out of Milwaukee, and when I'm talking to family, when I'm talking to friends, there are many things that are coming up within this election that women are finding important, at least my female friends are finding important, as well as my family members. So my mother, she is 79, she lives with me, and one of the things that has really motivated her is reproductive rights, which is abortion access. I'm a nurse by background, and so that's one of the things that we talk about in terms of in my house and within my friends. The other thing that's come up pretty significantly with friends is making sure that their votes are counted and that their voices are heard, and wanting to make sure that if they're going to the ballot box, that is something that is going to be respected as they go forward. So those are the couple of things that I would say personally for me is really important in terms of coming up to this election. I know you're going to ask about this, but one of the things that I was a little bit of surprising to me that wasn't on here, because I hear about it constantly, is childcare for women, and I wasn't on the list. And maybe it's kind of part of the economy and jobs, but that is another thing that comes up pretty significantly. My kids are a little older now; they're 15 and 17. Like don't have childcare issues. We have other issues, right, in terms of teenagers. But yes. But I do hear from folks all across my neighborhood that this is a real issue for families, and it's a real issue for women, because if the family makes a choice they don't have available childcare, oftentimes it is the woman who stays home to be able to take care of children if they're not able to afford it, or it's not accessible where they are. And so that is something that I hear about quite consistently as well.
Yeah, we'll have to talk to the pollsters about why they didn't include that. Go ahead, Mia.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. For me, I would say education is a huge one. So I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and just being a part of the Milwaukee public school systems, I see the lack of resources that are given to public schools, specifically Milwaukee public schools, which serves mostly students of color. And I see the lack of resources actually, even between like schools like Reagan, for example, and other schools as far as like King. Reagan is a top performing school, but they get a lot of resources and money and donors. But other schools like King or Washington or High School of the Arts, we don't see as much funding when it comes to resources, mental health, counselors. So I think that's just a huge issue. And even diversity, equity, inclusion, I think those resources are very important when we talk about education, especially resources for students of color. And now that I'm in college, I just definitely see those resources are very much needed, especially being a first-generation student going to college. And so I think resources are huge when we talk about education and affordability as well, because college is not cheap at all. So I would say education is a huge issue for me.
Go ahead, Megan.
Thank you for having me. So I bring a different, I guess, a pretty unique perspective of not only my friends, my family, myself coming to this, but also between AFP and AFP Action, we've knocked on over 500,000 doors this election cycle alone of mostly swing voters across the spectrum. So I can bring to the table to this discussion about how swing voters are thinking about this election as well. But overall, there's the normal issues people are cared about. It's the economy, it's jobs, it's cost of living right now, it's the border. But the thing that I'm hearing most from my close friends is just an overall fear of the future of our country. And it's from my Democrat friends, my Republican friends, and my independent friends. Everyone right now, especially my friends who also have young children, I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, it is what does the future of our country look like, and really feeling like this election is a crossroads for the direction of America and what it means for their kids growing up in America in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and what their future opportunity looks like.
Yeah, I mean, this used to be I forget which pollster, I think Gene Ohm, Public Opinion Strategies, used to say this was the most important question that he would ask, direction of the country. But it's not. It hasn't been so telling in recent elections about who the winner is. But everybody should have one of these. But that's on the last page. But the wrong direction is 54%, which is again that's unusual. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Leslie. I'm here with AARP, thinking and talking about the 50 plus. And that's such a big gamut, right? I mean, we have the young olders, and then the middle olders, and then the really old olders. And maybe the concerns have to do with the different demographics within that, is what I've gathered. I mean, if you're 50, you're still working, and you have all those concerns. And am I going to keep my job? I mean, we hear a lot of mutterings about that, possible age discrimination and all the things that go with that. We have concerns, all of us, about healthcare costs. 50 and up, you start encountering that healthcare issues, medicine, affordability, co-pays, all that all really adds up. And, yes, there's some small responses. We've got now the limit on the 10 drugs, but I have so many friends. I mean, that's the thing I haven't heard is the nuance, So, yes, you can have a generic statin, but if you have this kind of high blood pressure, you can only use this one kind of specialized statin that the prescription's $500 copay. Okay. If you're bringing home $2,500 a month on your Social Security and have everything else, what are you going to do? So all those are issues of people I talk to, think about. We worry about our children, those who have children, or even those who don't. They worry about their nieces and nephews or next generation. So Social Security is a big one out there. All the time we're hearing about the fund. And honestly, for me, one reason I got involved in AARP was Social Security and preserving it the way it is. And what I tell my son, I'm fighting for his Social Security and for my grandson's Social Security. Because anytime people put money in, they should feel they can get something out. So.
Okay, thanks, Leslie. Okay, Amy?
Well, good afternoon.
Okay, you come with a big introduction.
Do I have your attention now? Good afternoon, and thanks for having me. And Megan and I did not collaborate on our answers, but direction of our country is the first thing that I wrote down when you asked. When I talk to families and women and men, but I think particularly moms, they are really concerned about what the world their kids are growing up in looks like now and what it's going to look like in the future. And are they going to be able to have, the ability to own a home? Are they going to be able to have the freedoms that we grew up in, the safety that we grew up in? So these are more women who are my age, and their kids are now, getting to be, teenagers and voters. And those women, I think, who are influencing their young daughters growing up. And of course, I am in more conservative circles, but that is top of mind. They feel like their country has become almost unrecognizable, and they're sick of the fighting. I can tell you that. They're tired of the fighting. They're tired of the tribal politics. They're willing to go out and advocate for what they believe in, but I don't think they appreciate. I mean, I think we all watched the debate, or maybe we didn't, but this is a room full of policy nerds. But it was refreshing to have a debate on ideas with people who were cordial. And I think so many people are just turned off by the politics of fighting, and women in particular, because they do not see that as resolving any issues effectively. And sometimes they just want people who will govern and lead and listen, and not people who are just, dog whistle kind of talking points. So it's hard to break through. I get it. It's difficult when we get this close to an election. But the gender gap's not new. I know there are other issues that break across party lines, but that's what I'm hearing the most of. Not about healthcare or one or education. It's big picture stuff.
Okay, before I get to my next question, I wanted to ask Megan, because when you're on the doors, I mean, okay, the elected politicians know what this is like, right? Okay, you have your list and you go to the doors, but you talked about swing voters, and I'm wondering about female swing voters that you've talked to. Is there something different than what you talked about before, or is it, I guess give us some examples.
Yeah, I think the most unique thing we're hearing on the doors right now, especially with women, is we start off every one of our surveys with what I think is a fairly simple question. What is the most important issue to you as you think about your vote in November? It gives us an opportunity to then guide the conversation based on the issue that that voter cares about the most. Economy, border, healthcare, whatever it might be. And right now, the number of voters, especially women, who cannot give you an answer to that question because they feel like everything is so wrong in this country, is far exceeding anyone who can give you a single issue answer. I call it issue fatigue. I don't know what else to call it, frankly, but they just are feeling, it's this feeling of overwhelm and dread of like, I can't pick a top issue because everything is so important with this election cycle that no one issue stands out right now. And I think that is one of the biggest takeaways we have right now on the doors. And it's not, women all over care about the economy. Swing voter women's care about economy is their top issue. Border security, abortion, of course, is a top issue we hear. But it's that issue fatigue of being unable to pick a top issue because they're fearful of everything right now.
Okay, so Mia, this is your first time voting this year, right? Yeah, let's hear it. So I'm wondering what you and your fellow students, do you feel the dread that Megan is talking about, or are you optimistic, or give us a little insight into that?
Yes, so I'm very optimistic. I think there's just now more young people getting involved with just politics in the election cycle and process. And for me, I'm just excited to be able to choose. Voting is a right, and we, specifically women, haven't always had the right and the chance and the opportunity to vote. So just being able to vote, especially for a qualified candidate, not only because she's a black woman, but because she has the qualifications, I think is just really motivating. And just seeing my peers get involved is really inspiring as well.
Yeah. Okay, so Kamala Harris is in the state today at Ripon with Liz Cheney. And I guess I'm wondering, I'm going to go to the lieutenant governor here. So, when Hillary Clinton ran, the campaign really leaned into the first woman, history. And Kamala Harris, that campaign, not so much. And I'm just wondering, how do you feel about that as an elected female politician?
So you're right. I think in the 2016 election, a lot of it was leaning into that first woman president, which is exciting. I think it's exciting to be able to have a first woman president, because if you can see it, you can be it. But the reality is she is immensely qualified for this role. And that is how she has chosen to present herself in terms of, what she's done for the country. She's been in public service for a very, very long time, whether that was as district attorney or attorney general, a senator and now vice president, and has really differentiated herself in a way that I think is great. And I will say I have a 15-year-old daughter, and this is some of the things that we talk about how this is a possibility now. And even if you think about some of our states here, we've never had a female governor. I am the fourth female lieutenant governor in the state of Wisconsin. California has never had a female governor. And that surprises people, And so if we know we have qualified women, we know we have very intelligent women, and we should be represented in the same percentage as we are represented within the community, which is 50%. And that just isn't currently there today for a variety of reasons. But making sure that we are able to support women in politics is really, really important to me.
Yeah, I remember talking to Margaret Farrow when Margaret, well, I knew her as a state senator, and then when she became lieutenant governor. Margaret was very big on starting in local government. I mean, that was her pathway, right? I mean, and I don't know whether it's, Amy, is it like the same pathway, do you think, for women getting into office now, starting at the, city council or the county board, or, what do you think is or tell us your pathway.
So, interesting question. I can picture myself right now when I first decided to run for office, meeting Margaret Farrow and with my mom at a Culver's over near Brookfield, because our families have been friends for over 50 years. So I had decided to run. My mom went with me to meet with, they used to call her Peg, but to meet with Margaret, and I wanted her endorsement. And it was really important to me to differentiate myself. I had a 3-way primary when I ran. And we visited, and I was on my town board at the time. I was the town supervisor in my little town of Clinton. I worked at the Chamber of Commerce at the time. So I think when I went over and articulated my reasons for running, I think, and I learned her story as well. I mean, she was a village president. She didn't like her current representation. She felt her state rep was unresponsive, and she said, "Darn it, I'm gonna run." So she agreed to endorse me, and I think that definitely set me apart. And you didn't ask this, but I will share a little bit.
No politician pays attention to the moderator, Amy. But anyway, thank you for at least acknowledging that you're not going to answer.
But I also remember calling Margaret for her opinion on something on a race that I was undecided on, and asking her opinion. And there were a handful of men running and one woman, and she said, Amy, I would never encourage you to vote for the woman just because they're the woman. But it was a race that she hadn't weighed in on, but she answered my call, and it wasn't on my ballot. I just wanted her opinion, and I really valued it because she wanted to be perceived as someone eminently qualified for the position, regardless of gender, and she raised her boys that way as well. And my mom also took me to see Geraldine Ferraro when I was a teenager. She was very excited to have her on the ballot. So I think there's that enthusiasm for women, but when you put, like in a primary, and I think the data will bear this out, but if you had, women of the same party or women who are nonpartisan on a ticket, I think there's a likelihood for a female to vote for a female candidate. But when you absent of the political affiliation, but it would be, highly unusual for someone to just jump over in droves just because of their gender.
All right, let's talk about the gender gap. I mean, there's some dispute about how big the gender gap is going to be, but it appears to be huge, and I don't know whether it's going to set a record or whatever. The pollsters are kind of debating this, but there is a marked difference, and one of the things that struck me was in this data, when the percent of 50 plus choosing issues is most important to voting decisions by gender. The economy and jobs, where the male number is 34% and the female number is 21%. These are 50 plus, and that seems to me to be flipped. I mean, it used to be, I think, that women as the kind of the head of the household, manage the books, so to speak. Would, and I wondered, Leslie, what's your takeaway on the gender gap and maybe talking about the economy?
I think I'm going to focus this answer, and it's somewhat personal, and we haven't spoken about this at AARP, but it's a little bit of my experience in talking to folks in the Latino community. Is there really is a macho thing going on with this certain party and candidate, and I think too there's a perception, lot of Latinos are very entrepreneurial. They really want to start out, maybe just having that one truck and hauling things, and eventually, or mowing 20 lawns, and all of a sudden they have a lawn care service. And there's this perception that, I'm going to get a lot more profit, pay fewer taxes, fewer restrictions, and I'm going to be myself, Soy lo que soy, I'm who I am, and the women are more into maybe the gentility part of it, we want politeness, we want, back stereotyping the Latino community a little bit, but I mean, where you do want your children to grow up to say please and thank you and be pleasant to each other. And so I think that's where some of that comes in, and I'm guessing that reverberates throughout maybe some of the northern communities too. I don't live there. I live in southeast Wisconsin, but I'm just thinking that some of that just cowboy thing, might be pushing it.
Let's talk about the gender gap a little bit. I mean, I'd like to hear from everybody on that. Lieutenant Governor?
Yeah, there's been a gender gap for a long time, and some of these polling that I have now, which I don't know if I trust polling anymore, ever.
Wow.
But we will see, right?
That's just a good one for you.
Of course. I mean, then we're going to trust that one. So, but there is a pretty significant gender gap, and I said this before, but I do think reproductive rights is one of the areas is why there is such a strong gender gap today. And I mentioned my mother at 79. She went through, Roe versus Wade. She was somebody that advocated for that type of policy, and then to see that go away in her lifetime was really upsetting to her. And I have to tell you, my mother was a lifelong Republican. My father was a Democrat. And so they used to joke that they used to have to cancel each other out, right? But she never reminded him to vote. So, yes. But this is something that has motivated her, very specifically because of personal experience in her life or her friends' lives. And many of her friends who are similar age and women often talk about this too, because they saw what happened before. They saw what happened when Roe versus Wade was in place. And now they are so afraid for their daughters and their granddaughters in terms of their health care. So I do think that is maybe more of a motivating factor within this election today.
Okay. Mia, what's your take?
Yeah, so there is a big gap. I would also say just historically, thinking about like patriarchy and things like that, the idea that only men can do certain things or men can lead. But now in this day and age, like women can do it just as better, And I think just being able to see women in positions of power and leadership is very motivating. And I think that that's a driving factor that gets, a lot of specifically females out to vote and just to drive and motivating as far as just this campaign specifically. So, yeah.
Megan?
I think you can take any issue and you can divide it into a gender gap, an age gap, a race gap, an income gap. But at the end of the day, that's the beauty of our democracy. Everyone gets a chance to go to the ballot box and vote on the issues that are most important to them and for the politician that they think aligns best on their issues. And there's going to be gaps on every issue across every way you want to divide people. But like I said, we're all voters at the end of the day, and that's why we vote every election.
So I'm going to come at this. It's been interesting sort of prepping for this a little bit too, because the lieutenant governor is right. The gender gap is not new, but I think in size it has potentially grown. You probably know the answer to that, Jeff. But when you're talking about let's just take the horse race in Wisconsin at the top of the ticket, when you know the margins are going to be very slim, then everyone's kind of all in for a demographic that they know they can leverage certain issues to motivate them more, and so they're going to potentially be deciding how this election goes. But I would also argue it a different way, because if there's more enthusiasm on certain talk. Okay. But as someone strategically, I mean, I'm not a strategist. I come from the old school: knock on someone's door, look them in the eye, shake their hand, introduce yourself, ask for their vote, talk about what matters to them, and then move on to the next one. And that works really well in assembly races, and people are very persuadable. But presidential candidates don't have the opportunity to do that, so they get really lumped in. But I do think from a strategy standpoint that, we're always kind of fighting for the middle. The parties are fighting for the middle, but women do vote in double-digit, I think, participation rates higher than men. And so I guess if I were a strategist, I would try to get male voters who lean towards your issue and make sure they get to the polls. And it was funny you said your mom didn't remind your dad to vote, but voter participation in a margin in an election where the margins are going to be so tight, I do think that math creates an advantage potentially for the Democrats.
Okay, so let's go to, I think it's the mic. Let's go to questions from the audience. I'm not going to come out and talk to you because I have a quality mic, but why don't you just raise your hand and shout it out. Go ahead, back there. Come on. Okay, so if I'm interpreting that right, what you're saying is the combative politics is bad, and how can we get back to having a community of women? And you said like the League of Women Voters, is that what you get back to that style of politics where it was more of a community or places where women can gather?
I'd be happy to take a quick crack at that because I have been a candidate since 2011. Prior to that, I worked at the Greater Beloit Chamber of Commerce, and we used to do candidate forums with the League of Women Voters. I did their government relations. We'd prepare some questions. They'd prepare some questions. We'd collaborate. We'd break them down. Our government relations committee would weigh in, they would weigh in, and those debates were honest. They are so biased now. I know a lot of people who will absolutely just feel like they got a full frontal, I'm going to try to say this in as kind of a way as I can because I am happy to debate the issues with anyone. But over the course of the last, I'd say the 16 years that I have been participating in these debates sponsored by the League of Women Voters are very biased against Republican candidates to the extent that it is almost difficult to even answer the questions because they are so loaded. And that is why people don't participate in those kinds of forums because they feel like they are very unfair. And that's my honest answer, and perhaps others have other things to say.
Right, or maybe there's an alternate forum. It doesn't have to be League of Women Voters. But anyway, let's talk about the answer to her question about is there an organization or a safe place where you think that women can exchange points of view other than the WisPolitics Luncheon?
I I mean, in my perspective, I think this is just the overall decline in civic participation that we've seen in the last 10 years. People are not joining organizations, they're not going to church anymore, they're not involved in their communities, and the effects of tribalism are really impacting community involvement. And I think the first step anyone can do is go and talk to your neighbor. Go and talk to your friends who disagree with you. My best friends vehemently disagree with me on politics, and sometimes we talk about politics, but most of the time we don't. We talk about the things that we're worried about. We talk about our kids. We talk about where we want to go eat lunch, whatever it is. And getting back to that civil conversation and that life doesn't always have to evolve around politics. And I know this is a WisPolitics luncheon and we're all caring about politics, but like, we don't have to identify ourselves as Democrats or Republicans first. Like, let's get back to having conversations and being involved in whatever civic organization you think is important, and that's going to make a lot of difference in getting people, especially women voters, more comfortable talking about the issues.
So, no, I think that's great, and that one of the I think I am privileged to live. I'm a Democrat living in a pretty red county. And so that means if I didn't have friends who voted Republicans, I wouldn't have very many friends, right? And so we get to have those conversations, we get to have those talks, but oftentimes I believe we are in our own information bubble, and many times we live in either areas where what you believe is being reflected back at you, and we don't often have those conversations that we should be having with our neighbors or other folks who may disagree with us. And what I have found is, because I've lived there almost my entire life, is that there is so much more that we agree on than we disagree on. And what I would love to get to is, let's agree on the problem. We may disagree on the solution to get there, but there's a way that we can compromise or come together to try to be able to solve these issues. I don't know that it's going to be solvable overnight, but I will tell you that when I travel all across the state, people are exhausted with the partisanship. They are exhausted with it. They are so tired of hearing about it. And they just want us to govern and want us to pass policy that helps communities and helps their families. And so that's what we should be striving to get back to.
All right. Thinking about this, going across lines, one privilege I've had in my role with AARP, we're part of a region. We're put together with a whole bunch of other states. And interestingly, most are deep, deep red states, and we exchange information with other presidents. So I'm talking about North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Oklahoma. And they talk policy and issues because they don't have to worry about partisanship. That's just a given. We're Republicans, maybe what flavor or whatever, and we've learned a lot of different initiatives they've undertaken, whether it has to do with constraining utilities or inheritance type things, really important nuts and bolts things for people who are involved in those issues, whether it's higher utility costs, et cetera. And that has given me a feeling that if we focus on accomplishing something, it doesn't matter your party. And that's one thing I will say. AARP, we are nonpartisan. And with us, we do try and focus on things like caregiving. And every time we approach an elected official or a candidate, we say, tell us your caregiving story. And we find out that they took care of mom in her last 3 years of life, or, right now dad is living with us, whoever it happens to be, whether it's a congressman or, and it's all down to that person. And so then we try and link that possible legislation to their own experience and hopefully get some movement that way. And maybe it's those kinds of steps, that understanding we are all in this human condition together and try and make the best of it we can.
Yeah, I think for me, just witnessing my mom, Charlotte Moore, she ran for Alderwoman of the 10th District and won. So just being able to see her in that position as well, and going on doors and knocking and getting to meet people, people that don't look like me, like people from different backgrounds and aspects of life, I think that's one part of community. Just her, she's always doing something in the community, whether that be bringing groceries to the next door neighbors because they don't have enough food, or talking to the kids outside, because a lot of the times when people see young people, they don't look at them, they don't speak to them. It's just like we're non-existent. So I think just getting back to that community, because there's a saying, it takes a village to raise a child, which it does. Just holding each other accountable, like seeing the people in your neighborhood, in your village, whatever, just talking to people, getting to know people. It doesn't always have to be about politics, but when it does, just having an open mind and just listening to people's experiences as well.
Do you have faith in the way the elections will be run? And go ahead, Leslie, you want to talk about this?
Yes, I'm a poll worker in central Milwaukee, and I can't tell you the amount of training I've had to go through. Our binder, our elections have so much integrity. It's just unfathomable to me. If someone really dove in and took all the training we did and followed us poll workers, they just could not see how it could not be. You can always say something is not so. I can always say the sun isn't shining. But when I really got deep into being a poll worker, and in fact, on the 19th, I'm scheduled for 2-hour online training. A week ago, we had to go through a 2-hour safety training. Someone from Homeland Security, from the police department, and the FBI gave us training on how to stay safe and how to duck and cover and how we would have special police assigned to the polls that day. But we're going to be there, and we're going to do all the things we have to do. We're from there 6 a.m. preparing for. We stay at the polling site. After they close on presidentials, is usually an hour and a half to 2 hours after, auditing and reconciling the ballots to the books. The audit procedures, I worked in a lot of administrative work in my work life. The audits are incredible they've set up. So in terms of the absolute objectiveness of our voting system, it's golden.
I'm just going to make an observation. I'm glad you're a poll worker, and thank you. I think there are arguably more female poll workers in this state than men. That is true wherever, it seems like wherever I voted. And more clerks. And you're right, there is a series of checks and balances, and a lot of people that are working the polls and that are observing the polls, take those jobs really seriously. I do think when you have people from outside of our state that don't understand how localized our elections are, then they come in with this set of assumptions, not at all understanding the landscape. And I answered so many questions about the 2020 election as someone being in office from people who literally didn't understand how elections run in Wisconsin. Because I think when you do, and when you've been in the position of helping the polls, or voting on bills, things like that everything is in place. And I think they just more what one of the things that I am hearing lately is now there's something circulating that there's going to be something is going to happen on election day, and people aren't going to be able to vote. I hope that's not true, but but that's a different concern than I've heard before. Maybe they're trying to get more people to vote early, but other than that, I do think that the confidence in the election system in Wisconsin lies in people at the local level, and I appreciate the work they do.
I just agree. Thank you for being a poll worker. And we do, Wisconsin has absolutely one of the safest systems in order to vote, and that is something that people can have trust in.
So have we become desensitized to crimes that in past years would have disqualified
you? So for me, we had this thing like in our culture, it's called cancel culture. So automatically, if you did something wrong, you'll be canceled for it. And so I think so much has been normalized to the point where it's like, oh, that's normal. Gun violence, for example, in my community, you'll hear gunshots in the middle of the night. That's not normal. That's something that shouldn't be normal. So when young people go to sleep, it's just something for them that's normal. When they're walking home from the school bus, oh, that's normal. And it shouldn't be normal. So I think to your point, things that, President Trump has done is become just desensitized, like you said, and just normalized. And so I just think to get back to how do we just not make that so normal is, educating people and just really talking. A lot of people, we all have influence in this room, whether it be family, friends, neighbors, we all have some type of influence. So just being able to, tell people, okay, well, that's wrong. Like, it's right from wrong. It's wrong at the end of the day. So just being able to just have those tough conversations sometimes and educate people on those types of issues as well.
No, I don't disagree. I think, I ran for office in the assembly, and I was unprepared for the level of vitriol that I had received as a female candidate running for office, and that was surprising to me. And running with other people who didn't get that level of attention to whether the way that you look, which also dehumanizes people, as opposed to really paying attention to what type of skills you bring to the table. I am hopeful that we can get to a spot where there would be a disqualification for holding higher office if people are treated you treat people in a certain way, and the pendulum is swinging, and I'm hoping it swings back to say that this is unacceptable behavior for anyone. Full stop. It is up to the voters. Yes, it is. And that is going to have to be something that they decide whether it's disqualifying or not. For me, it is. But, they're going to have to make those decisions.
Well, you made a good point. I mean, the voters have access to, I think, information and are able to make their own decision. But, again, I'm just going to kind of flip the script on the question as asked, because I would say for a long time in history we have had candidates who are flawed, candidates who are crooks, candidates who are philanderers, and awful people through history that have won elections and haven't been disqualified. And now it seems like we try to impeach people for any reason. So I understand your question, but I do think that, maybe it's because I live so close to Illinois, but we've had some really, really flawed candidates on the ballot throughout history, and voters are entitled to make their decisions, with the exception of something. And I think even on the local level, we struggle with where is that line to be crossed, especially with wrongful acts while in office, particularly like if you're looking at a local elected official, that maybe there is something that we would need to kind of codify, but otherwise, I think it's not a new issue. So, and I appreciate you asking a follow-up question, because I think the question was, how are we normalizing this when it's really, I think it's risen to a level of awareness, but unfortunately, we have allowed bad behavior in the past, and we are continuing to allow or to accept bad behavior, but it is not new. That is what I meant to say. Right, but it shouldn't be normalized. But it's not just. But I'm just saying, it's the way that the senator asked the question. It's not new with this one person. I think we would be being dishonest with ourselves if we didn't acknowledge that we have had a history of normalizing some of this behavior that we should not. And I agree that we should not continue. Okay. Well, I consider myself a person of okay, thank you, of strong character. I just think there's some hypocrisy, and that's why it's hard to kind of talk about these issues. But we've had. We can talk about President Trump. We can talk about President Clinton. We can talk about President Kennedy. These are things that, again, I think as women, though, there's a struggle between, is this a person that I would associate with had it not been that they're my, the person on my ballot, and I, like I said, I think the way the senator framed the question was just kind of gave me a little bit of a prickle that I wanted to point out, but your point is very well taken.
For me, my family is in politics. My uncle, David Bowen, my mom. So I just have a long line history of just my family being in politics. But for one, at a young age, I wanted to be a neurosurgeon. I was all in the medical field until I started participating in the program my mom and dad co-founded called Urban Underground, which is a social justice and youth leadership organization for teens. And so when I started to see the impact that young people have and just our voices can, just the impact when we come together and are able to change systems and policies, that kind of just drove me to wanting to become just a part of the political spectrum and just government in general. So I was able to participate in protests, lead a walkout at my school. So all of these things have helped me just to become the person that I want to. And I think just going into politics, I'm currently studying political science at UW-M. So just wanting to change Milwaukee, change where I grew up from, and just give back, and also just change policy that affects marginalized communities and specifically people of color. And just thinking about, because I also sit as co-chair of the Milwaukee County Youth Commission, and so just being able to actually change and create policy and resolutions that affect young people in Milwaukee is just something that I'm very passionate about, and I love advocacy work. So that's just me. Thank you.
It's kind of interesting. So it's amazing that you are doing this so young. I never thought that I would do this. It was not on my bingo card to be the lieutenant governor, to run for office. It wasn't something that I thought I would do. I've been an executive within healthcare, and that was where I thought I was going to be my entire career. What got me motivated to participate more was 2016. And so I'm a regular voter, but not particularly engaged, in terms of advocacy. And my husband is an immigrant from Mexico. And the anti-immigrant rhetoric that we were hearing in 2016, and we're hearing now, it actually hit my 8-year-old son. He brought that back from school and was talking about that anti-immigrant rhetoric at 8 years old and worried that he would be deported. And that broke my heart in a way that I didn't expect. And so when the 2016 election happened, I felt like I had allowed other people to advocate for me and my family, and I wasn't doing my part. And so I started volunteering more with the Democratic Party in my county, the Waukesha County Democratic Party. Again, not thinking I'd run for office. That was not on my list. And then I had left my executive job at 2020. Of course, COVID happened. And I had more time and wanted to participate more. And I have a background in infectious disease. I have a background in all of these things. And I thought, well, here's a way that I can help maybe change the direction of where Wisconsin's going for that. And so I ran for assembly and did that. And so I thought I could bring my skills and expertise to the table. And then being able to bring that same voice to statewide as the lieutenant governor was really important to me. But it was precipitated by feeling as if I needed to be more involved. I did not have the level of civic engagement that I should have had, and I didn't ever want to feel that way again in another election, that I had not done my part. And so here I am.
I also wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be a dermatologist. I went to UW-Madison and I took my first chemistry class and almost failed because I am not good at science, it turns out. And then in the second semester of my freshman year is when Act 10 happened, and I had a TA who told me, hey, if you want credit for coming to class, come join and protest with me. And I was like, what are we even protesting? Like, what is going on? So I read up on what Act 10 was, and the next day I got an internship with my home state senator and have never looked back. Randy Hopper.
Hi, I also come to this position. I'm a first-generation Mexican immigrant. I moved here at the age of 9, and at the age of 17, I had to decide my citizenship and take all the tests and everything. So I had to learn all the things, how a bill becomes law and your representatives and all that. And I thought, wow, this is really something, and thinking at that time politics in Mexico was not certainly representative, the pre-ran everything. So it seemed really powerful to me that you could have choice, real choice. And so slowly I became interested in politics. I did my range of door knocking. I really enjoy actually going to the South Side. Since I'm bilingual, I can talk to folks, try and figure out where they're at, what they're going to do, what they want to do, and then have them understand how to vote if they can vote. I do work on a lot of voter registration drives on the South Side of Milwaukee, and so is that giving people the power and the choice, and the voice, which that is what's so frustrating being a poll worker. We have 20 to 30% sometimes in our polls come, and when we think, you see the lines of people lined up in South Africa to vote, or, you see the people lined up in all these other parts of the world where they really value the vote. I just wish we could, give that contagion here, but I come at it from having seen it from the outside coming in.
Okay, so Amy, you have the last word. So what piqued your interest in politics?
Interestingly, so I went to UW-Madison. I have a degree in international economics and political science. And political science was sort of, almost all the credits were overlapping, so I ended up with a double major. But I ended up going into more of the consulting engineering field. I did a lot of permitting and compliance work, helping businesses navigate the complex regulatory process. I was really more of just, follow the directions, figure it out, etc. And then I did government relations at the chamber. Never really, I voted. I knew which, kind of where my personal values were, but I was not involved I wasn't an activist. I wasn't involved in the Republican Party of Wisconsin or Rock County or any of those things until my decision to actually run for the assembly. I had run for my local town board, but when I was actually at the Capitol on Rock County Day in Madison in 2010, and my state representative announced they were not seeking re-election, and I had done all those candidate forums, and I thought to myself, I think I have better answers than what I usually hear when I go to these forums, so I might as well share what my ideas are, what I would do to address. Mostly it was economic issues. Rock County was, it was 20% almost unemployment in Beloit where I worked in 2010. Janesville, the plant was closing, so a lot of economic and jobs issues. And in the space that I was in, I felt like I had a lot to offer, and the voters gave me that opportunity.
Okay, that was a great question. Thanks. Okay, and thanks for all your questions, everybody. I think that much better than my questions. So thanks a lot. I want to thank our sponsors, of course, Hush Blackwell Strategies, AARP Wisconsin, American Family Insurance, Xcel Energy, Walmart, Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield, and the Wisconsin Insurance Alliance, sponsoring the Wisconsin Eye video. Thank you, Wisconsin Eye. And let's thank our panel, everybody.
As the state's leading property and casualty insurance trade association, the Wisconsin Insurance Alliance plays a crucial role in safeguarding Wisconsinites. Alliance members provide vital insurance coverage, ensuring financial protection for individuals, businesses, and communities across the state. In times of need, they act as a reliable resource, helping residents recover from unforeseen events. Ultimately, the Wisconsin Insurance Alliance and its members contribute to the resilience and well-being of Wisconsin families and businesses by offering essential protection and support. You have been watching a production of Wisconsin Eye, your unfiltered window into legislative deliberations and public policy programming, where our mission is to provide Wisconsinites an opportunity to access the legislative process and connect with conversations that inform our citizenry. Please consider supporting our mission, and thank you for watching. Wisconsin Eye, policy made public.